Harley, this is Zach here. I'm responding to your most recent video putting out the challenge to a wide audience of anyone consuming animal flesh products. In the title of the video you put a few different titles in there. One of them I personally wouldn't lump into one category with Primal and Paleo diets, and that is the standard American diet. It's a bit tongue-in-cheek to add that in there, thinking that it's on par in terms of health or its effect on your health. The challenge itself I'm not responding to in terms of accepting the challenge, but I'm responding to it from a place of let's actually examine what it is you're asking people to do and see if it's actually based in any sort of logic in the sense of what you're asking, which is evidence for a logical reason for people to consume meat or a scientific reason for people to consume it. And this is your way of putting out this challenge, and it's such an intense challenge that you're probably not expecting anyone to actually go through and do it, and if they do, there's sort of a double bind there, because then you're going to be pointing the fingers and saying, ha ha ha, this person's doing something so disgusting as biting a chicken's head off or catching a pigeon or eating a chipmunk or whatever it is they're going to do if someone does actually do it. And if they do, or if they eat roadkill or something a little bit disgusting, I would say, if they were to do that, then so be it, they've done that and you've gotten what you wanted. And I'm just wanting to look at what it is you're asking people to do in this challenge and sort of refute your assumption or idea that it is the only way that we could prove that humans are designed to do this if someone actually goes out and does this. So number one, by using the argument that someone has to do this without any tools, with their bare hands, naked in the woods, you could say, first of all, you're totally ignoring the fact that humans have evolved for many millions of years with tools, and if you don't understand evolution, it's basically an adaptation over time, and there's biological changes that take place to help a species make the necessary adaptations to whatever environment or behavior is occurring. So if we take an ape, for instance, the idea of a chimpanzee or an ancestor of ours that would have looked somewhat like a chimpanzee, we could take even the modern day chimpanzee and look at them and how they use twigs and things to dig out ants and termites from a mound to eat those bugs. We can't really say that that's unnatural, because that's something that they've used their intelligence to figure out how to do, and that's something they've started using. There's other animals that use tools in certain ways, nothing as complex as obviously the great apes, and then eventually humans. We have the most complex, and that is in part due to the advanced size and thinking and reasoning capacity of our brains. So to immediately say you have to do it bare hands is already showing that you don't understand where humans have come from and how long we've been using tools. So again, using that concept of the ape, the chimpanzee, we wouldn't necessarily need to say that if we took away twigs from chimps, they wouldn't be able to be carnivorous, although they do catch monkeys with their bare hands by trapping them in trees. And it's not unrealistic for a human to trap a rabbit with his bare hands or some other animal. You're just asking someone to actually do that on video, and that's fine. But again, if someone wants to use a tool to hunt, that's their choice, and that doesn't mean that it's unnatural, because it's something we've been doing. It's something we came up with doing, and we've adapted quite well to both the tools that we use for hunting. Obviously, it's gotten to a point of, you could almost say, cheating nature, where people are using basically sniper rifles to hunt, and so be it. That's their way of doing it, and that could be something someone out of their own values protests, and that's cool. I probably would do the same and say, if you want to hunt, use a bow and arrow or use a more primitive weapon. But we know that humans, or Homo erectus, has been using stone tools for at least 1 million years, and even sporadically before that for up to 3 million years ago. So even in addition to stone tools, there was the spears for bringing down animals, but then the stones were used for butchering, and what this allowed was for humans to consume large quantities of red meat from large grass-grazing animals on the savanna and the plains, and even once the ice ages hit in those areas. And so that made up the significant portion of human diet for many millions of years. We have the biological adaptations to digest meat and to deal with it, despite sort of the dogmatic thought around humans' physiology. The idea that we need to have big sharp teeth to eat meat when we've adapted to tools is a little bit silly, considering if we weren't hunting with our bare hands and teeth, we never would have adapted the long teeth like a carnivore would. You can simply look at a baboon or various other apes that eat a much more plant-rich diet. In case of baboons, are herbivorous, and they have massive canines. You look at a hippo, they have the largest and sharpest teeth in the African plain, but they're 100% plant food eaters. What do they use that for? There's a lot of other uses for teeth than just hunting. Displays of dominance and power over each other, so fighting. So it's pretty key that you understand that idea, and that anyone understand that idea, that just because we don't have big massive teeth or big claws doesn't mean that we're not designed to handle animal flesh, because, like I just mentioned, the tools were our adaptation, that were our extension of our habits. So when you are using that for that many millions of years, you never develop the things you would if you were an animal that was just relying on no external tool and using a tool that its own body would create through evolution. And we know that humans have the largest brain in comparison to gut size of any animal found in nature. Our large intestine has shrunk considerably compared to our ancestors, and even comparing to modern great apes that we're related to the most out of any other species, they have large intestines that are roughly twice the size, or even more in the case of gorillas, which are hindgut fermenters. They're meant to consume large quantities of greens and other foods that we have difficulty digesting fully in such large quantities. And they have large intestines and also sometimes specific enzymes and bacteria that are designed to digest such a high fiber diet. But because humans have a small intestine that's twice as large as our large intestine, so basically our large intestine has shrunk over the many millions of years of evolution that we've had consuming animal products, and that is a known fact at this point. We know this from scat remains that have been fossilized, as well as the carbon imprints on teeth that directly link up to a higher animal food diet and lower on the plant foods, just like other carnivores from those time periods, whereas herbivores have different types of carbon molecules on their teeth, embedded in the teeth from their diet. So we know pretty much without a doubt that humans evolved eating a massive portion of their calories on average all the time from animal foods. There's no debate about this anymore. The only debate is within sort of the vegan community, or the raw food vegan community, and it's just simple bickering on beliefs. There's nothing of actual substance that people are bringing to the table. You know, if you want to argue that point, go out and become an anthropologist and show some evidence for that, but there is none, because humans have consumed meat for over 3 million years as the majority of their calories in their diet. Another thing to take into consideration that I hear a lot from actually your community in the low-fat, raw vegan, sort of fruitarian type community, is that humans have these hands perfectly designed for picking fruit off trees. We know that that's not how our hands evolved. We got thumbs from obviously swinging through trees, and yes, there was fruit in our diet at that time in certain amounts, not nearly as high in terms of a percentage as you guys would like to imagine we would have eaten that way. However, when we descended out of trees and you look at the hands of an ape, like a chimp or a gorilla, it's quite different from ours. We have a very dexterous hand, and we learned to and adapted to get this type of hand from working with stone tools. And this comes back to this idea that through using our hands with tools, and again we're bringing in the brain and its size and intelligence, learning how to use these things, and adapted, and our hands became something integral to our survival, success, and dominance of the animal world as we evolved. So you may still want to see someone run out and grab some animal with their bare hands and eat it in that way, and that's fine. However, you have to understand that if you're looking for that for proof that this is the way that or that it's possible for humans to do this, that's a little egotistical to stay stuck to that, especially after you've watched this video and now you know the science behind it and behind human evolution and what we evolved doing and are capable of doing. It would be very close-minded to stick with that way of thinking. One more thing I'd like to touch on is also fishing. We use fishing rods, and that was another tool that we created, not as far back obviously as we were using spears and stones for butchering land animals, but again, that's just another example of something we learned to do with our ingenuity that we got from this large brain that we developed and evolved from consuming such large quantities of animal products, specifically animal flesh, and the animal fats that fed the caloric needs of our brain, also giving it the cholesterol and other nutrients it needed to grow to such a large size that it is today, that allows us to do all the things that we do now, such as fly into outer space and do the other positive achievements of humanity. Of course, the human species has its drawbacks in the things that it has created. That can be probably drawn to a number of factors. But this much we know for certain: the small digestive tract size in comparison to the size of our brain is directly related to our animal food consumption, and also in part the fact that we started cooking our food when we developed fire maybe 500,000 years ago, thus making the proteins more easily digestible, breaking down plant foods and plant cellulose. I'm definitely a proponent of raw foods, but we do have to acknowledge that, again, this was a way of creating very hard to digest food, or that would require a lot of digestive energy to digest, and turning it into easily absorbable food. Yes, it would have its drawbacks. You know, charred meat and charred foods that would have occurred from cooking it on a fire would really lead to arthritis and probably other problems related to the cooking. However, the cooking did allow certain nutrients that couldn't be accessed in such concentrated amounts to our bodies, and that again was another factor in reducing our gut size and increasing our brain size, and was an integral part to human evolution that we can't just deny and dismiss just because we have this fanciful idea of how humans should be and how we should be if we want to eat meat, that we have to go out and get it barehanded. So that's just food for thought, and anyone that's watched this, I hope you take these words into consideration and not just lean on your belief systems too heavily. With that, I'm going to say take care and embrace life without limits.